Nadia Petrova and Leila Hassan thought they were chosen for a life of luxury by Prince Khalid Al-Rashid. But what awaited them inside the Gilded Palace was far darker, a world of control, fear, and modern-day slavery that would test every ounce of their courage. Nadia Petrova had always known hardship. Growing up in Eastern Europe, she worked long shifts in a cramped cafe, scraping together enough to keep her family afloat. Her mother's health was fragile, her younger brother depended entirely on her earnings, and every day felt like a battle against poverty. Then came an unexpected offer. She had been chosen by Prince Khalid Al-Rashid to work in Saudi Arabia. The contract promised wealth, safety, and a luxurious life far from the hardships she knew. To Nadia, it felt like destiny itself had reached for her. She imagined walking through grand palaces, her family free from worry, her own life finally secure. The letter arrived in a glossy envelope, carried by an elegant messenger who spoke little but conveyed authority. Nadia barely slept that night, staring at the offer and imagining what life could be. She pictured the marble halls and golden chandeliers, imagining herself standing alongside other women chosen for their beauty and grace. One name stood out among the others, Leila Hassan, a shy woman who had also been invited, whose photograph was tucked inside the packet. Nadia felt a strange connection to her, imagining a friend to share the wonders of this new world. Despite excitement, unease crept in. Stories of women disappearing in faraway lands flickered through her mind, but she pushed them aside. Prince Khalid's name carried weight. His status made the offer seem legitimate, untouchable. Even the thought of Amal Rahman, who would oversee the women, seemed secondary to the allure of wealth. Nadia packed lightly, carrying hope in one hand and fear in the other. Little did she know the palace that awaited her, the prince who seemed powerful yet distant, and the enforcer watching from shadows would turn her dreams into a nightmare. The invitation that promised freedom was the first step into a gilded prison, and the life she imagined was about to vanish. The morning of departure arrived with a mixture of excitement and fear. Nadia Petrova and Leila Hassan were escorted to a private jet waiting on the tarmac, its polished exterior gleaming under the sun. Other women chosen by Prince Khalid Al-Rashid were already on board, each holding onto the hope of wealth and freedom. The cabin was filled with the scent of expensive leather and perfume, and the attendants moved gracefully, serving lavish meals and sparkling drinks. Nadia tried to focus on the comfort and luxury, imagining the relief her family would feel when she sent her first paycheck. Leila sat quietly beside her, fingers intertwined, her nervous eyes reflecting the same mixture of hope and unease that Nadia felt. As the plane soared above the clouds, Nadia allowed herself to imagine the life waiting for her. Silk dresses, glittering chandeliers, endless money. She pictured Prince Khalid as a benevolent figure, welcoming her into a world of privilege. Yet, even in the midst of this fantasy, a small knot of doubt formed in the back of her mind. She had heard stories of women who vanished under mysterious circumstances, but she told herself that could never happen to her. Hours later, the plane landed in Riyadh. The excitement began to fade as officials boarded immediately, collecting passports from every woman. Nadia asked when hers would be returned, and a stern officer told her it was for security. She accepted the explanation, though unease prickled at her. Outside, black SUVs waited, their windows darkened, engines idling quietly. Nadia and Leila were herded inside, the doors shutting with a heavy thud that felt far too final. As the vehicles moved through unfamiliar streets, the enormity of what awaited them began to sink in. For the first time, Nadia realized that the golden dream she had imagined might be far more dangerous than she had ever allowed herself to fear. The journey toward luxury had become a ride into uncertainty, and freedom was already slipping from her grasp. The convoy of black SUVs moved silently through the desert outskirts, the city lights fading behind them as Nadia Petrova and Leila Hassan pressed against the tinted windows. Nadia's heart pounded as the buildings gave way to sand and darkness. The air inside the vehicle was cool and perfumed, a stark contrast to the tension that coiled in her stomach. Other women sat silently, their faces pale and anxious, each lost in thoughts of what awaited them. The only sounds were the hum of the engines and the occasional shuffle of guards moving through the SUVs, their eyes alert and unwavering. After what felt like hours, the convoy arrived at a massive palace hidden behind tall walls and iron gates. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, their rifles gleaming under the spotlights. At first glance, the palace seemed like the dream Nadia had imagined. Pristine marble staircases, fountains sparkling under floodlights, and gardens trimmed to perfection. But the beauty carried an oppressive weight. Cameras lined the entrances, tracking every movement, and the gates closed silently behind them, sealing their arrival. Inside, chandeliers sparkled above expansive halls, and golden accents glimmered along the walls. Nadia and Leila were guided through the corridors by guards whose eyes never wavered. Each step echoed, reminding them that freedom had already been replaced with control. Their rooms were luxurious, with king-sized beds and silk curtains, but the windows were sealed shut. It was a gilded cage. The beauty surrounding them could not hide the stark reality. Later that evening, Prince Khalid Al-Rashid appeared briefly, his presence commanding and cold. He did not speak, but his sharp gaze swept across the women like an appraisal of property. Nadia felt a chill. The prince's power was absolute, and the silence of his presence was more frightening than any threat spoken aloud. That night, as she stared at the sealed window, Nadia realized that the palace was no sanctuary. It was a prison, and escape would not be easy. The next morning, Nadia Petrova awoke to a sharp knock on her door. When she opened it, Amal Rahman, the palace instructor, handed her a thick binder labeled rules and left without a word. Nadia's hands trembled as she opened it, flipping through page after page of strict commands. She was forbidden to leave the compound, forbidden to communicate with the outside world, forbidden to speak unless spoken to, and required to follow every order without question. Each rule was accompanied by clear punishments: solitary confinement, withdrawal of food, or removal from the program entirely. Nadia felt her chest tighten as she read, realizing that the golden life she had imagined was beginning to slip away. Later, Leila Hassan approached cautiously, clutching her own binder. The two women exchanged worried glances, but dared not speak aloud. Amal Rahman patrolled the halls like a shadow, her eyes sharp and unyielding. One small misstep, a crooked smile, a hesitant step, could draw her attention and result in punishment. The weight of surveillance pressed down on every movement. Cameras lined every hallway, recording each gesture, each word, each moment of hesitation. Nadia felt the walls of the palace tighten around her, the beauty of the chandeliers and fountains overshadowed by fear. Amal explained nothing, relying on the women's understanding of consequences alone. Her silent enforcement made it clear that any challenge to authority would be met with swift and harsh action. Nadia realized that the palace was not a home, but a system of control, and Amal Rahman was its enforcer. The golden walls, once dazzling, now seemed to mock her. The promise of luxury had transformed into chains she could see but could not touch. That night, as Nadia lay awake beside the sealed window, she understood the reality. Freedom was gone, replaced by rules designed to break spirits and enforce obedience. The Gilded Palace was a prison, and Amal was the ever-watchful warden. Training in the palace began the very next morning, and Nadia Petrova quickly realized that the gilded walls were more than decoration. They were a cage designed to shape and control every aspect of her life. Amal Rahman led the sessions with an unyielding intensity, correcting every movement, every expression, and every gesture. Nadia and Leila Hassan were lined up in the grand hall, their posture scrutinized, their smiles rehearsed, their voices measured. Even the slightest hesitation could earn a sharp glare or a swift slap. Other women whispered that a single mistake could lead to disappearance. The fear was constant, and the rules bound every breath. Prince Khalid Al-Rashid occasionally appeared, seated like a judge at the head of the hall. He spoke rarely, but his presence alone carried authority. A look from him was enough to silence a room. Amal seemed to anticipate his expectations, pushing the women harder whenever he was present, her corrections more severe, her punishments sharper. Nadia felt herself changing under the pressure. The woman who had boarded the plane full of hope was disappearing, replaced by a carefully molded version of what the palace demanded. Meals, sleep, and even bathroom breaks were scheduled. The women learned to eat quickly, to move silently, to always appear cheerful even when exhaustion gnawed at their bodies. Leila Hassan often faltered under the strain, her eyes hollow and fearful. Nadia would steady her, offering small reassurances that they both knew were fragile illusions. With each passing day, the palace became a machine designed to strip individuality. Nadia understood that she and the other women were no longer visitors or guests. They were possessions. Every lesson, every correction, every forced smile was part of a plan to erase their past lives. Luxury had become control, beauty had become bondage, and freedom was a memory fading faster with each enforced step, each rehearsed glance, and each cold inspection from Amal and the ever-watchful Prince Khalid. Weeks passed, and the reality of the palace fully sank into Nadia Petrova's mind. The grandeur of Prince Khalid Al-Rashid's estate no longer inspired awe. It pressed down on her like a weight she could not lift. Each day followed the same unyielding rhythm. Inspections at dawn, endless cleaning, serving lavish meals to guests, or standing as decoration in rooms filled with strangers. Amal Rahman's watchful eyes never left the women, correcting posture, behavior, and even expressions. Every minor slip was punished immediately, and stories of vanished women haunted the halls. Leila Hassan, once hopeful, now moved silently, her eyes wide with fear, rarely speaking unless prompted. The palace was alive with quiet dread. Whispers among the women told of girls who tried to escape, only to disappear, and others who were transferred to different estates never to return. Nadia understood that these were warnings, reminders that freedom had no place within these walls. Surveillance cameras recorded every movement, every glance, and every misstep. The beauty of the marble floors and crystal chandeliers seemed to mock them, a constant reminder of the gilded cage surrounding them. Even routine tasks became instruments of control. Nadia scrubbed floors that were already spotless, polished silver that would immediately be dirted again, and served guests who barely noticed her presence. The monotony was broken only by the occasional appearance of Prince Khalid, whose silent observation carried more terror than any words could. Amal's presence intensified during these visits, her corrections sharper and punishments harsher, ensuring the women remained compliant. Nadia and Leila clung to each other silently, sharing fleeting moments of comfort, yet both knew that hope was fragile. The palace, with all its luxury and grandeur, was not a sanctuary. It was a machine designed to dominate, erase, and control. Nadia realized that survival depended on obedience, concealment, and enduring the oppressive system surrounding them. Every day, the walls closed tighter, and the illusion of freedom slipped further away. One night, as the palace lay quiet under the desert sky, Nadia Petrova noticed a small crack of opportunity. While delivering linens to the service quarters, she spotted a service door left slightly ajar, a rare oversight in a place governed by Amal Rahman's unyielding vigilance. Her heart raced at the thought of escape, and she debated whether to risk everything. She glanced at Leila Hassan, who lingered nearby, hesitant and trembling. Nadia urged her forward, but Leila's fear rooted her to the spot. Swallowing her own panic, Nadia slipped through the doorway, stepping into a dimly lit corridor that led toward the gardens. The faint scent of jasmine carried on the night air, a stark contrast to the metallic tension that coiled in her chest. Every step felt like a gamble. Nadia moved cautiously, aware that the guards' patrols could appear at any moment. The palace, which had once seemed grand and protective, now felt like a labyrinth designed to trap her. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she approached the outer perimeter, spotting the high walls topped with razor wire. For a fleeting moment, she imagined freedom, sunlight, streets, an air that was not monitored. Suddenly, alarms shattered the night. Red lights flashed across the gardens, and Nadia froze as guards emerged from the shadows, weapons raised. Amal Rahman appeared almost instantly, her cold eyes scanning with precision, assessing every escape attempt. Nadia's sprint faltered as shouts echoed, and rough hands seized her. Panic surged as she was dragged back into the palace, realizing the consequences were far more severe than she had imagined. For punishment, she was thrown into a windowless basement. Days blurred into darkness, food and water rationed to the bare minimum. Isolation and deprivation gnawed at her body and mind. Nadia understood, with grim clarity, that the palace's walls were not just physical, they were psychological. No one left alive, and every failed attempt only reinforced the control Prince Khalid and Amal Rahman wielded over her life. Weeks of isolation and fear had not broken Nadia Petrova's resolve, though they had worn her down physically and emotionally. When she was finally returned to her duties, the palace felt even more suffocating. Each corner, each hallway, seemed to hum with the invisible presence of Prince Khalid Al-Rashid and the watchful eyes of Amal Rahman. It was during one of her assignments in the prince's private study that she stumbled upon a discovery that would change everything. While dusting a large, ornate desk, she noticed a drawer left slightly open. Curiosity mingled with terror, but Nadia knew she could not ignore it. Inside were stacks of documents, passports, contracts, and photographs of women who had been brought to the palace, including Leila Hassan. Some files were stamped deceased. Others carried notes about transfers to other estates. The sheer scale of what she was seeing made Nadia's stomach turn. This was not a singular act of cruelty. It was an organized system. Each woman had been carefully processed, cataloged, and controlled. Nadia flipped through the papers with trembling hands, seeing faces she had briefly encountered in the palace corridors, women who had vanished without a trace. The reality of what removal truly meant hit her like a physical blow. The files also contained forged passports and instructions for moving women across borders, evidence of a trafficking network far larger than anything Nadia had imagined. She pressed the drawer closed, her mind racing. Every detail she had witnessed, the strict rules, the training sessions, the constant surveillance, suddenly fit into a terrifying pattern. The palace, with its chandeliers and marble floors, was not a place of opportunity or luxury. It was a hub of exploitation. Nadia understood that her life and the lives of countless other women were controlled by a system of power, fear, and profit. The gilded walls no longer symbolized comfort. They were a mask hiding an industrialized form of slavery, and she now carried the knowledge that could expose it. Weeks passed after Nadia Petrova's terrifying discovery, and she carried the weight of the files like a secret stone pressing against her chest. Fear coiled inside her constantly, but so did determination. Every hallway of the palace whispered danger. Every shadow hinted at Amal Rahman's vigilance. Yet, one day, a fragile opportunity presented itself. Viktor Mikhailov, a European contractor hired to repair sections of the palace, seemed uneasy around the women. His gaze lingered on Nadia and Leila Hassan longer than the guards would allow, as if he sensed something hidden behind their silence. Seizing a rare moment, Nadia managed to slip a torn page from her binder into a stack of trash that Viktor collected. It was a desperate note, pleading for help and revealing what she had discovered about Prince Khalid Al-Rashid's trafficking network. For hours afterward, she sat in fear, convinced Amal Rahman or the guards had noticed. Days passed, and subtle changes began rippling through the palace. Guards whispered in tension, inspections became harsher, and the women noticed a rare nervousness among those who had always been in complete control. Nadia clung to the fragile hope that Viktor had understood the message and was acting on it. Amal Rahman intensified her watch, correcting even the smallest errors, punishing the women with increasing cruelty. Nadia and Leila Hassan endured every hardship silently, knowing that resistance could mean disappearance. Yet, amid the terror, a spark of hope persisted. Someone outside the gilded walls was now aware of the horrors inside. Nadia focused on survival, each measured step, each obedient gesture, driven not just by self-preservation, but by the desperate desire to see the truth exposed. The palace remained a prison, but the knowledge that someone beyond its walls might intervene became a lifeline, a slender thread connecting the captive women to the world outside, and the possibility of rescue. The night the rescue came, Nadia Petrova barely recognized the palace she had known for months. What had once seemed magnificent now felt like a tomb, its halls echoing with fear and silence. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Sirens wailed, alarms blared, and lights flashed red across the marble floors. Armed forces stormed the palace, moving swiftly and decisively. Guards tried to maintain control, but they were overwhelmed. Amal Rahman appeared, her face pale with disbelief, realizing that the authority she wielded was collapsing. Nadia's heart pounded as she was pulled from her duties, along with dozens of other women. including those she barely knew, all huddled in shock. Prince Khalid Al-Rashid was confronted by the rescuers. His power, which had seemed absolute, crumbled under the evidence Nadia had discovered and the coordinated operation led from outside. Guards who had instilled terror in the women for months were subdued, and the gilded palace that had felt like a gilded cage now resembled a crime scene under investigation. Nadia moved cautiously through the corridors, searching for Leila Hassan, her friend and fellow captive, but her room was empty. Leila had been removed long before the rescue arrived. A wave of grief and relief washed over Nadia simultaneously. She was free, but not all had survived. Viktor Mikhailov, the contractor who had risked everything to deliver Nadia's message, was ushered alongside the rescuers, his role finally recognized. The women were guided outside into the night, wrapped in blankets, their eyes wide with disbelief at the world beyond the palace walls. Nadia inhaled the cool desert air, feeling freedom for the first time in months, yet knowing the scars of captivity would remain. She had survived Prince Khalid's system of control, Amal Rahman's ruthless enforcement, and the palace's psychological torment. The world would now learn the truth. Nadia had been chosen not for luxury, but for slavery, and the nightmare behind the gilded walls had finally been exposed.